Hello, welcome to The Wrestling Show. I'm Doc Allen. Today I'll be covering the January 12th, 2022 episode of AEW Dynamite. This aired live from the PNC Arena in Raleigh, North Carolina. Commentators were Jim Ross, Tony Schiavone, and Excalibur. So unlike most episodes of Dynamite, this show opened with a talking segment rather than a match. Adam Cole and Red Dragon came to the ring for story time with Adam Cole. Cole said that 2021 was a great year for the trio and that 2022 would be even better, especially for Adam Cole, who's still undefeated. They were then interrupted by the Young Bucks with Brandon Cutler, and they boasted that they are back after Matt kicked COVID's ass in 2 days. The Bucks admit that they overstepped boundaries with a recent assistance that was unasked for, but unfortunately for Adam Cole, both the Bucks and Red Dragon have their sights set on the tag titles. Cole tries to shift their thinking to friendly competition being a good thing for the group. They're then joined by Orange Cassidy and the Best Friends. Cole wants to know what important thing Cassidy could possibly say, which prompts OC to hit a fierce spear. The Best Friends clear the ring. Cassidy backdrops Cutler onto the Bucks and Red Dragon. Cole then sneaks up behind Cassidy for a low blow, and Chris Statlander comes out to shield Cassidy, but then Dr. Britt Baker runs in to put down Chris with a curb stomp. So Britt helps join in on the beatdown on Cassidy, holding him in place for Adam Cole to hit a super kick and then his running knee to the back of the head. Cole does the thing where he asks for a kiss from the Young Bucks, who aren't all that interested, but he gets a big smack roll on the teeth and the mouth from Britt instead. So the group stands tall, and again, Adam Cole is just beaming. He's got everything he wants. He's in cloud nine, and Britt's happy to be there, and Red Dragon and the Young Bucks still don't seem too thrilled about each other's presence and having to work together. Up next, we got a video package for Wardlow set to classical music, and it's because he dishes out symphonies of power bombs, so it's fitting. Then we get a commercial for the Go Big show. The judges watch a guy set himself on fire and solve a Rubik's Cube, and Cody looks really disgusted and uncomfortable by the stunt and walks away from his station. But you just know that he's thinking, that would look cool on Dynamite. So up next, we had Wardlow with MJF versus CM Punk. And this match did a really nice job paying off all the recent Wardlow squashes. So Wardlow did well keeping Punk on defense. And MJF was like screaming orders at him throughout. So when Wardlow finally was able to hit a power bomb, MJF wanted him to do more. So Wardlow ended up hitting about 7 power bombs, including another power bomb through the announce table. Punk looked dead, and it looked like the referee was going to have to make the decision to call the match off early, because it looked like Punk was completely helpless. MJF kept getting more and more sinister with his orders, and he became a distraction, so much so that Punk was able to catch Wardlow with an inside cradle and pin him at 14 minutes and 3 seconds. So, for all intents and purposes, Wardlow had Punk beaten during this match. There was one point where you would have expected Wardlow was going to get the pinfall with a cocky pin, except that he was distracted by MJF. So, Punk did everything he could in this match to put Wardlow over, aside from take the pinfall. So this was a very different, deliberate, and compelling narrative-driven match. And the main story seemed to be whether or not Wardlow was going to keep accepting his orders from MJF. And like I said before, this paid off the several weeks of Wardlow squash matches. So it rounds out to a 3-star match, even though it wasn't very competitive. After the match, MJF berated Wardlow, and it looked like Wardlow was going to turn because he grabbed MJF by the finger. but Sean Spears ran in to play peacemaker, and it looked like they're going to have their tough conversation later. Up next, we had Powerhouse Hobbs with Ricky Starks versus Dante Martin, and this was just an average little TV match. It felt a lot like the previous match in that the bigger guy dominated for a big stretch of it, but Martin did make a spirited comeback and was able to get a lot of good near falls out of his high-flying offense, including hitting a really just missile dropkick that was so high. If this were held in like a smaller building, he would have hit the ceiling. So, Starks then telegraphed his intention to interfere, which caused Jay Lethal to run in and neutralize him. So that allowed Martin to win with a springboard moonsault out of nowhere at 10 minutes and 9 seconds. So a little bit eyebrow-raising that Lethal was the one to help out Martin and not Lio Rush. So I don't know at this time if Lethal is replacing Rush in Martin's storyline or if he's joining him, and that this will be like some kind of trio going forward. But I know that Rush was very public in his unhappiness with how Tony Khan handled the situation with Big Swole, and it sounded like they had a productive conversation about that. So I don't think Rush is in the doghouse, but it's hard to tell with Rush sometimes because he can be very polarizing in locker rooms, and I know he has a reputation for being hard to work with management, and I don't know if that's warranted or not, or if it's like has an element of racial bias to it. But I did find it strange that he was nowhere to be seen during any of this. Up next, we had a backstage interview with Chris Jericho in the Inner Circle, minus Sammy Guevara, and they're celebrating the fact that they won Pro Wrestling Illustrated's Faction of the Year award. Jericho says that this prize is no surprise because they set out from the beginning to take over the country or company. Slip of the tongue from Jericho, not me. That time anyway. And they did this by being the baddest blood brothers on the planet. Eddie Kingston then sauntered in because he wants a piece of Daniel Garcia, who is, of course, feuding with 2.0 against Jericho and friends. So Eddie then makes Jericho's life hard by saying the reason why Santana and Ortiz have not been tag team champions is because of Jericho. And that's actually a pretty good argument if you stop and think about not only the times that Santana and Ortiz were derailed by fighting Jericho's personal feuds, but also by all that nonsense some odd months ago where the Inner Circle had that match within themselves to name which two-man unit from the group could challenge for the tag titles. And at that time, that was when MJF was still part of the group, and he and Jericho definitely got ahead in line of Santana and Ortiz at that point. So there's some continuity for you. So Jericho and Eddie are bickering, and the group leaves them behind so they can get their S together. And Jericho makes the intense case, not playing this up for laughs, that he will get his revenge on 2.0, and he's going to kick Eddie's ass too if needed. Then MJF came back out to the stage to complain some more about CM Punk. Fans give him the a-hole chant, and MJF says that every schmuck in attendance knows that Punk only beat Wardlow by a fluke. So next week, he's so mad he's going to give us all the match we've been waiting for. It's going to be CM Punk versus Sean Spears. So, get here though. Play figuratively. So, we have to wait a little longer for MJF and Punk to get their hands on each other, which is smart booking, because like I've been saying, I think you want to save that for the pay-per-view and not for TV, especially if MJF's neck is still recovering. Up next, Adam Cole, Red Dragon, and the Young Bucks talk to the camera. They argue about whether or not cameraman Brandon Cutler is named Landon or Brandon, and then they're joined by Britt Baker, who wants to challenge Orange Cassidy and Chris Statlander to a mixed tag match with her and Adam Cole. And then she tells Brandon Butler to stop filming. Brandon protests how to say his name, and the whole group tells him to shut up. So That was kind of cute. I can see some people aren't happy that these guys are still doing some comedy, and I think bad guys can be funny, especially when they're being jerks and bullies in the process. So up next, AEW champion Hangman Adam Page came to the ring to talk. He says he's poured sweat and spilled blood, enough to float a battleship, while battling Bryan Danielson for 90 minutes combined. Hangman says he needs a new challenger, and then gets interrupted by Dan Lambert, who compares Hangman unfavorably to the cowboys that he watched growing up, like all the real men of wrestling past. So Lambert calls Hangman an urban East Coast cowboy, so it's no wonder that these fans relate to him. Hangman calls Lambert a walking Facebook profile, and kind of wants to cut to the chase and say if Men of the Year want title shots, they should be out here talking to him directly. Lambert then puts Hangman over by saying he feels that he has earned everything he's accomplished in this business, with the exception of the cowboy moniker, so the idea here is that Hangman is a fake cowboy, unworthy of that gimmick. And Lambert goes on to say that anybody can put on a cowboy outfit and sing YMCA, and that doesn't make them a cowboy. Which is a good point, except for Hangman's rebuttal that he used to work on a farm only 90 minutes from where the arena, or 90 miles from where the arena is. So he makes his case that even though, there's some pretty rural parts of the East Coast, it's not all cities and highways, right? So then Lance Archer returns, chases Lambert back into the ring after he had tried to run away from a fight with Hangman. And then in a very predictable swerve, Archer turns his attention to Hangman and lays him out and puts him through a chair with the blackout. So looks like we have Hangman's next challenger, and it's a surprising one because I figured it would be Miedo, unless this is just a short TV feud, the Occupy Hangman before the pay-per-view. Backstage, Tony Schiavone interviewed Arn Anderson with the young team of Lee Johnson and Brock Anderson. Arn is really proud of his guys and says that smell in the air means they're in horseman country. They're interrupted by fellow horsemen Tully Blanchard and FTR, who are trying to recruit Lee and Brock. That sets up a match for a Rampage. Arn and Tully shake hands and the match is official. So then up next, we're supposed to have Hikaru Shida versus Serena Deeb. And this ended up not being much of a match because Deeb was hyper-focused on her promise to make sure that Shida did not walk away from this. She ambushed Shida during her entrance with a chop block to the back of the knee, and then just relentlessly went after the knee, hitting a single-leg atomic drop onto the ring steps, and then it didn't look like Shida could even start the match, but she insisted. And then in less than 2 minutes, the referee ended up throwing the match out because Deeb had Shida stuck in a half crab and was really wrenching it back. Shida was refusing to tap out, but she couldn't make it to the ropes, so they were kind of no-win situation for Shida. So I don't mind that finish. I thought it was effective given all the circumstances. The referees should be allowed to make judgment calls like that and not have everybody throw a tantrum about it. So, no rating because it was such a short match, but it was a complete slaughter by Deeb and advances the feud. After the match, Deeb continued to light Shida up with kendo shots until referees rushed in for a very believable rescue. Up next, Tony Schiavone interviewed Christian Cage and the AEW Tag Team Champions Jurassic Express backstage. Christian wished Rey Fenix a speedy recovery, and Jungle Boy says they worked hard to get the titles and they want to work harder to retain them, so they put out a challenge to any top 5 team. This brings over John Silver and Alex Reynolds, who just happen to be top 5 guys, and they set up a match for Rampage. That should be a good one. Then Big Money Matt Hardy and Private Party come to the ring. Hardy takes credit for starting Lucha Brothers' downfall and invites Penta out to get deleted. And of course, they're near Hardy's home compound, so he was definitely playing into some cheers here, and his wife and sons were in the crowd watching. And that led to a match of Matt Hardy versus Penta El Zero Miedo with Alex Aberjantes. And I felt like, even though the match was kind of structured where Penta was still the babyface, he took the heat sequence during the commercial break, they definitely leaned in and had Hardy play the subtle babyface and have Penta play the subtle heel. And Hardy had the crowd playing along with his delete, delete, delete chants. Otherwise, this match wasn't really all that interesting. It didn't really get the crowd that hooked. It was pretty average. There were some neat or some brutal spots, like Penta put Hardy into a tree of woe for a double stomp to the face. They had a fight on the apron that resulted in Hardy hitting a side effect onto the ring frame. And despite those kind of spots that might have stood out in another match, they didn't feel all that meaningful in this one. So Penta ended up hitting Fear Factor and winning the match at 8 minutes 47 seconds. And again, there was very little crowd interaction besides playing along with the delete chant, so just 2 stars. Up next, Alex and Penta turned their attention back to Malachi Black, who then arrived via the Lights Out gimmick. Black took Penta down with roundhouse kicks and started to tear at his mask. That brought out Varsity Blondes for the rescue attempt, and it looked to me like Julia Hart was trying to call them off, and it also looked like throughout the sequence, nobody from Black's camp made any advancement towards her, and she seemed to want her guys to stop fighting them, and I guess she could have the plausible deniability of she just didn't want to see violence, but it almost seemed like she could be a double agent at this point, because my theory is that anybody who's taken the Black Mist to the face is going to be revealed to be a member of the House of Black, and nothing that happened or didn't happen in this segment disproves any of that, so I'm satisfied for now with my potential fantasy booking scenarios coming to life. So anyway, the lights go out again, and this time Brody King makes his debut when they come back on, and he single-handedly lays waste to the good guys. Julia seems to be pretending to be outraged from the safety of ringside, and since my fantasy booking scenarios are still alive and well, I am pleased for now. And I'm just being cheeky there. They can go in any direction they want as long as it makes sense, and I won't complain too much. So up next, we had Tony Schiavone interviewing Chris Statlander, Red Velvet, and Layla Hirsch ahead of their trios match on Rampage. But Tony and Chris seem to just want to talk about the upcoming mixed tag with Adam Cole and Britt Baker. And Layla Hirsch mouths off that she thinks it's selfish of Chris to focus on her own business like this. Chris thinks Layla is just as selfish for always trying to steal the pinfall in their matches. And Red Velvet wants them to get it together. So this was a productive segment that advanced their storylines. I didn't think the acting here was particularly well done, which was disappointing. And to be fair, these are 3 women who very rarely are allowed to speak on TV, especially without the benefit of post-production with video promos. And you can see why they haven't been allowed to talk too much up to this point, but at the same time, they're not going to improve unless they get these opportunities, so it's kind of a double-edged sword. Up next, we had the Acclaimed of Max Caster and Anthony Bowens versus Bear Country, consisting of Bronson and Boulder. And I guess Bear Country must not like rap music, because they had a hot start with stereo shoulder blocks. They slammed the Acclaimed onto each other, but Bronson ended up getting unable to keep Bowens contained, so Bowens arranged a meeting of the mind. Then they went through a commercial, and they didn't go too far after they came back. Boulder got the coldest hot tag that you've ever seen, just tagged into no reaction, and you could almost hear that womp womp sound, and he made the best of it despite the crowd not being with him, and he did earn a pop from them when he hit a double flatliner. Bear Country set up the bear bomb, but Bowens pulled Caster to safety, and Caster snapped Bronson's neck on the ropes, allowing Bronson to finish with the mic drop at 6 minutes 15 seconds. This was an all-right short match. It just lacked any crowd interest at all. So this was a 1.5 stars. Up next, the Acclaimed can't celebrate because Sting and Darby arrived to repay them for their rap disses. Sting backed the Acclaimed back down in the ramp so Darby could wipe them out with a skateboard-assisted dive, and Sting put Caster down with the Scorpion Death Drop, and I think I'm ready for this feud to get wrapped up. Next, we had a video promo from Pac, who I'm guessing is stuck overseas again while COVID surges. He feels alone and desolate, and he's wearing a blindfold over both eyes. And despite being blinded, he says his vision has never been so great. And it appears he's holding one of the cards from Malachi Black's estate. So I think those are some pretty unsubtle clues that Pac is joining the House of Black. So get that, Ron Paul, it's happening meme ready. Backstage interview with Matt Hardy, who's upset about losing the Penta. He thinks it might be time to focus on himself more than the Hardy family office. And I think he's probably onto something there, because this angle has gone absolutely nowhere and hasn't really benefited anyone involved. And, it seemed promising at the beginning, but now Private Party seem to have been defined down as, rather than being hot prospects, they're just, Hardy's henchmen. And so I approve of the change in direction here. I think that this has had enough time to become something, and it hasn't. So he's interrupted by Andrade El Idolo, who starts over to make a business deal. See, Andrade loves money, and Matt loves money, so perhaps they should work together for money. And Hardy is willing to talk because he does love money, but they're going to talk off camera. And that's probably a smart move, especially with all the shifty contracts that seem to be floating around AEW. So then we had our main event, which was the interim TNT Championship. Sammy Guevara defended against Daniel Garcia. David Crockett was once again at ringside to present the championship to the winner. And Eddie Kingston and Chris Jericho were both lurking around ringside. So Guevara and Garcia didn't seem interested in all these outside shenanigans and just tore into each other for a really intense grappling sequence. They traded stiff shots, and they blocked each other's finishers. They went through a commercial. After they came back, Daniel slipped away to ringside to get away, so Sammy caught him with a springboard 450 splash to outside. Garcia recovered with a backdrop driver for a good 2 count. Garcia then blocked the GTH again and put him into a really deep Scorpion Deathlock that Sammy considered tapping to before ultimately making it to the ropes. Sammy went for a double springboard attack, but Garcia countered into a really tight sleeper, so much so that the commentator said it resembled a bulldog choke. So he'll be dropping some hints about a possible pending return for Mox. And then Garcia transitioned that into a pile driver for a nice false finish. Sammy came back with an enziguri to buy some time, but around here 2.0 arrived to attack Kingston and Jericho. Sammy has to stop to super kick Jeff Parker from the apron, and that nearly got him rolled up by Garcia. Sammy then knocked Garcia into Matt Lee and finished with a poorly filmed GTH at 12:32, because it was pretty blatant that Sammy was slapping his thigh while doing it, so made the move look really phony, which was an unfortunate ending to an otherwise really good match. And I will say this was a brave match for them to put on last, because Garcia at this point is all potential and raw talent, but they haven't really gotten him over yet. So putting him in a Dynamite main event is progress towards getting him over, but again, for now it's kind of a double-edged sword. So I'll be curious to see what kind of writing this episode draws, and if Sammy Guevara's star power is enough to carry a segment like this. So I thought this was a good match, though. 3.5 stars. Afterwards, Crockett hands the title to Guevara, and their nice moment was ruined by another 2.0 attack. Jericho and Kingston managed to clear the ring, but then they got into another shoving contest to end the show. So, final thoughts. This episode was heavy with angles and storyline development, and I liked it. I would like to see more episodes like this in between the bigger shows. There wasn't a lot to talk about as far as the matches themselves, but there was a ton coming out of it as far as storyline development. So if you skipped this episode, you'd be really behind because a lot of things got advanced. Nothing got settled, but many things were advanced. And also, you got a big debut from Brody King, and you got a meaningful first-time on-screen pairing between Britt and Adam Cole. And you also got some significant teasers about who else is going into the House of Black. So, this Dynamite was far too eventful to skip. So if you missed this, I recommend you fire it up on your DVR and check it out. So, that was Dynamite for January 12th, 2022. Thank you so much for watching. Please click that subscribe button. Remember that if I get to 100 subscribers, I'll start covering SmackDown every week. Also, please check out my written reviews at thewrestlingsite.com and follow me on Twitter at DocAllen, DWS. Also, pay a visit to our friends at onestopwrestling.com, and you'll find links to this and many other podcasts on their podcasts page. So, take care. Don't do anything I wouldn't do.